Could you imagine feeling as though you were born into the wrong body? I have a very special guest here today, and before we begin, trigger warning. We discuss sexual assault and other topics that may be triggering or sensitive, so please listen with caution. The What's Eating You podcast is a series of mental health topics that are designed to make you think, learn, educate, and validate. Enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of the What is Eating You podcast. Hope you are having a fantastic week. I sure am, and I am so excited to have today's guest on the show. Demitri is a neurodivergent transgender coach who has been transitioning from female to male since he was 15 years of age. Demitri started to document his transition at the start of lockdown, and his TikTok has grown to over 50,000 followers. And it is still growing because he brings out these amazing videos talking about his transition. He's transparent, he's out there, and he's not afraid to hold back. Not only that, he was recently on a reality TV show on the BBC. It's called Go Hard or Go Home. And this was the first time he came out as a trans and spoke about his struggles. Not long after, Demitri spoke about how he was diagnosed with both ADHD and autism. So without further ado, Demitri, welcome to the show.
Do you know what I've said? Is there anything else that they want to tick off the list at this point? I always joke around and say that I'm a walking pharmacy at this point because the way that I always say, even with like my autism and ADHD, that when you get diagnosed with both of them, it becomes your whole life. And then slap being transgender, that you're discovering who you now are and who you always have been for the first time publicly, and you're doing it in front. I'm doing it in front of the world at the moment, and it's a scary, scary process because it's not just what's black and white and what people automatically assume that of people like me. There's a lot more to it than just hormones and surgeries. There's a hell of a lot that people don't see. That's why I say it's like the tip of the iceberg. You only see about this much, but there's so much more underneath that people are afraid to speak about. And that's how I got my niche, because I spoke about things that not many people spoke about. I documented things that most trans men are like, oh my God, no, I can't do that. People will judge me. And I always say to people, like, me doing reality TV was a massive thing for me as a trans man, especially with the BBC.
Yes.
With their like recent history with obviously my community. And I've said to everybody and anybody that I've spoken to afterwards, if I can come out on national television to a bunch of strangers that I didn't know, live as a cisgendered man or a biological man for 2 days, completely blag it and pretend to be a biological male, then you can do anything in life, because I've done it in front of the whole nation to see, and other people in different countries if they've got VPNs. So anything's possible, really.
Oh my goodness. And there's so much I want to unpack here. You being on TV, coming out as a trans man, but let's maybe start from the beginning. So take me back to when I guess you first discovered, I mean, we were talking a little bit about this off air, but how did you come to realize that this was your path?
So I guess from a young age, I've always been into like your tomboy things. Hated wearing dresses. I wore one at prom, but I felt like it was kind of, I needed to for maybe my mum and dad. And it wasn't me. I wanted to be there in a tuxedo, but I guess I knew from a young age. But there's one thing that I respect about my parents. They let me live my life until I was ready to tell them. They didn't force me into anything. They have always said, and they've always been on the front of it, that they do not care that what I want to identify as. My mum and dad have both said, you can identify as a toaster as long as you're a good person, like, and you're not hurting anybody. That we don't care. We just want you to be happy. And it took them a while to get their heads around it. And I think it's given for any parent, because I always say, and this is what makes me different to a lot of people, that sometimes parents don't come round, but sometimes they do, because I've spoken about on my previous TikToks with the grievance process that your parents essentially, when you have a child, that you expect your child to grow up as the gender that the doctor tells you they are, that they're going to hit certain milestones, that gender will typically hit. For me to turn around and say to my mum and dad at 15 years of age, I'm so unhappy in my own body because I had to use Google. There weren't any trans people in my town. I come from a little town called Stratford-upon-Avon that in the UK that William Shakespeare's famous for. Very Tory populated town. LGBT isn't really a big thing here. It's become a little bit better now as the times have gone on, but it was very much a scary process, and I think my mum and dad, they blame themselves, which is normal for any parent because they said to me that they wished that they knew sooner, but I
Mm.
didn't know. I just thought, "Oh," and it wasn't until, like, I properly looked into it and did my research because obviously being on the spectrum, I hyperfixate, so I pretty much Googled everything I could and possibly find on the internet. I think I even used Wiki, and I know that's not a reliable source sometimes, but
Mm.
anything I was just taking at this point to find out what I was feeling because I think because I didn't know, I didn't think I was normal. I thought there was something literally wrong with me. I was like, no, this isn't normal. Like I was, why am I feeling like I want to be a boy, but I was born a girl, and it was school and the pressures of it all. And
Apart from feeling, I want to be a boy, but I'm a girl, were you feeling anything else? Can you describe more about the emotions or the thoughts that were going on
I
for you?
think definitely starting female puberty and starting periods and growing breasts. I hated it. I tried to hide them. I hid my period away from my mum. I think it was about 2 months until obviously she found out because I'd made an accident. And she was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I was like, "Because I don't want them. Why have I got them?" Like, and I
Mm.
was adamant that I didn't want kids because I think I just didn't want to give birth. And eventually something happened to me when I was 15 at school, trigger warning, I got sexually assaulted, and that heightened my hatred towards my own body even more.
Mm.
And I sort of say that that was a pivotal point in me coming out as trans. Whether that happening to me heightened those feelings that were already there, I can't tell you. But I think there's a lot of us in the community that have gone through what I've been through before we came out. That it does in height. You already hating my body and my gender and hating my body parts as it is, to then having that happen, it made me even more heightened. And I was like, no, I am right. This is how I'm feeling. This is how I should have been born. And spitting down and speaking to my parents about it, I know it broke their heart seeing that they had a daughter that was saying to them, "I don't want to be a girl anymore, mum and dad. I want to be a boy." And them sort of having these, I was the only daughter on my dad's side of the family, and that would have carried obviously his. I still can, but in his terms, carry a child that would, and I think it hurt them a little bit more because they were desperate for a girl, and then everyone sort of joked around when I was younger that my mum was going to be pregnant with a boy, the firstborn was going to be a boy, and then I
Mm.
came out as transgender. And my parents now, they are the most accepting people. A lot of my content actually comes from my mum asking me questions, and
That.
it's the questions that she'll ask me that I'll sit there and I'll remember she asked me about obviously things in the bedroom, and she was like, "Okay, so do you do anal?" And I was like, "No, mum, that's not what I do." I said, "I don't like it." I said, "There's straight people that do that too, mum." I said, "But no." And I had to sit there and explain my I was mortified. I moved into here after I got made homeless, and my mum found that naughty toy box that we all have when we're on our own, and we don't have partners, or we do have partners and they might work away. One of those spicy drawers. My
Right.
mum opened it, did not know what any of it was. I had to sit there and explain, and there was some of
Oh,
my transition stuff. I was mortified. I was 19, 20 years of age, and I was like, what? I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. But we've got that relationship now after that happening. I think she could just ask me anything, and I sit there and go, "If you ever did this to anybody else, they'd put you in a mental hospital, mum." And she's just like, we'll sit there and we'll just laugh about it. But I think, like with my mum, like I think she's so self conscious that sometimes she does slip up. She occasionally called me my previous name, and that's okay. I always say that if you've known somebody for so long, my parents knew me for 15 years as female, them calling me, I'm very open with my old name, but it's something you don't ask trans people because some people aren't as comfortable. But
don't
my mum
ask.
and dad knew me yeah, it's some people aren't as open as their transition as me. Some people want a dead name to be a dead name for a reason. Their old name is sort of their past. But the way I see it is, I was 15 years as Emily, and Emily made me into Demitri and sculpted me into the man that I am today. So when my mum sometimes calls me or accidentally goes she, or my daughter, she'll go, "Oh no, I'm really sorry." And I'm like, "Mum, it's fine. Like, stop panicking." And I think it's because there's so much pressures on social media around what is transphobia and what
Yes.
isn't, that people are so scared to speak to somebody like me because they're worried they're going to offend me. I've turned around and said to people, unless you're being an absolute idiot and you're doing it with malice behind it, if you're generally curious, and sometimes, like, it's curiosity. Not many people are going to meet a transgender person in real life. You might do, you might not even clock, because looking at me, you wouldn't think, "Oh, he was born a female." People think I'm a gay man. I don't mind that, even though I'm not gay. I don't mind it. It's got man on the end of it. A win's a win in my eyes, but that's the way I see it. And I
Yeah.
think I'm one of those people that I think for very, like, this has only been sort of the thing over the last year since filming my TV show. I met a lady called Heather Fisher. She played on the England women's team. Absolutely tank of a lady. And when I say I am not the man I am today without her, I'm really not. She had me at one of my lowest points on that show, and she told me to love the journey and the story that made me. And that is finally what I've started to do. And she put that play, and it's for the first time that I'm like, do you know what? Yeah, I think anybody can do anything to me online or say anything about my transition. They'll never be able to take away how far I've come and what I've been through to get here. And that's what I always tell people, like, no matter who is shouting the loudest at you and who the biggest hater in your life is, you've got yourself this far, you're going to get yourself even further, and they're not going to stop you, because what they're going to ideally do about it, they're not, unless they're the government, they can't really do much. So I always say, stop worrying about what other people do and sort of do things for you, because it's your life at the end of the day. They can't live it for you. And it's why I always say to people as well, in terms of transitions, anybody can come out as transgender, but only you can transition yourself. You can't have other people do it for you. You can have other people help you and guide you along the way, like what we call trans fairy godmothers or fathers, that are people in the community that are like me, that
Yes,
have been
yes.
out a wee while. We're a bit older. We sort of know our stuff, and I feel honoured when I get little trans men. They're like young trans. Some of them are a bit
Oh,
older than me, but they've only just come out, and they go, "Hey mate, like I watched your content," and I've had parents reach out, and I've sat there and gone,
love that.
like, what? I post my videos not for like not for following and not to gain a big platform. That just happened. I just started to document my journey, and I've always prided myself on wanting to be the trans man that I wish I had when I was a kid. Don't
Yes,
get me
I
wrong,
love
I've made
that.
mistakes.
Yeah, I love
But
that you say that. I wish I want to be the trans man I wish I had as a kid. And just going back on what you were saying, even I was vulnerable and nervous about this interview. You know, what if I say the wrong pronouns? What if I use the wrong term? Because it's not an area that I work in regularly. I did work with a couple of trans teens when I used to work with youth, but it's not an area. So throughout this interview, if there's anything I say that, you know, I could do better, or I could, you know, we could educate the audience on, please let me know. Because that's one thing I really love about your content as well. You are always taking accountability for something. I feel like you're always
oh,
owning up or reframing something. And I'm like, wow, it takes a lot of, I was going to say balls, but I don't know if that's appropriate. But it takes.
oh, you can say that happily. I've got metaphorical ones at the moment. That's why I'm going to Canada to go look at actually getting some proper ones done, because the surgeon over there is amazing.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we've got to come to that as well. There's so much I want to cover here. But yes, please let us know throughout, even if something is
Yeah,
mentioned, like you said, not asking about their name or that past or how exact,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying. But
yeah.
tell me about TV. I secretly have a fascination with reality TV because I've been asked to go on TV. I haven't actually done it because obviously as a psychologist, there's ethics and all that jazz. And I've spoken to a few people on Married at First Sight and just how things are edited and how they're actually produced. Tell me a bit about how you actually got on reality TV and what the show is over there. Because I think in Australia, it might be similar to, I'm not sure if there's an equivalent here, or what's the show called?
So it's called Go Hard or Go Home. So it was a reality TV series that they took a group of a group of young adults out to. We filmed it in Dominican Republic, so I can now say where it was filmed because that's been released. And it was sort of like a mind, body, spiritual healing. So we were all there for different things. Like I was there to grow a little bit more confidence. So I went on without top surgery. I was actually off hormones at the time and was actually retrieving my eggs the following month when I came back home. So there was a lot that people didn't know on the show. And for me going out there, it was a massive thing for me because they picked up on me from social media. I was like, do you know, I asked my mum about it. I went for my mum for some advice. I was like, Mum, I've been offered this. It's not dating or anything. Don't worry, because my mum's always said to me, don't do a dating show on this. But I've said to her,
Yes,
like, I don't
everyone
think I
says
could.
that. Stay away from Married
She
at
went, her rules were for me, don't sleep with anybody on TV, don't do anything stupid, and don't get yourself too drunk and embarrass any of us, or don't tell any really bad, embarrassing stories, because I ain't got no filter sometimes, and I've learned how to reel myself in now. But I think like having social media definitely helped, and I got my claim to fame because I got slated in the tabloids in the UK by Daily Mail. They took a TikTok that I said reasons why women should date trans men. and they basically put down, because of the comments, there were comments of married women saying that they'd leave their husbands for me. So they put trans man claims he can steal any man's girlfriend because of the comments. They slated me. I went from 3,000 to 10, I think it was 10,500 overnight. I was like, what the hell is this? Panicking, ringing my mum, and nobody at work knew I was trans at this point in my old job. Bang, Daily Mail article pops up, Lab Bible pops up. My head I didn't know this article was coming out and it happened at work. My head was like, oh my God. Walked out of the office and I was like, I'm going home. Nobody's telling me any different. I rang my mum, panicking on a 40-minute train home, going, because I used to work in Birmingham. I was like, Mum, she went, I've seen the article, but what, have you spoke? I was like, no. But in the UK, tabloids can take anybody's video off TikTok and use it in an article without their permission because it's public. It's public.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. That happened to me the other day. So I have like a secret TikTok account where I just post random stuff, my Greek family, just comedy.
Yeah.
And I put this hack that I thought I discovered about getting an upgrade to business class. And the next thing I know, people were sending me articles and they're like, Australian woman has found the hack for business class.
I've seen that. It was on my Facebook. I was like, I swear that's you. I was like, it is.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I'm going to use that when I go to Canada. If it works, I will be making a recommendation video and I'll show people I've got an upgrade. So I'll give it a go and let you know if it works.
Thank you. And I think it can go either way. I've had people's videos blow up really positively and really negatively. But in this case, you were that guy that was going to take married wife's husbands. Is that what they were saying?
Yeah, they called me a bit. So, you know the song like Mr. Serial Girl by Peter Andre? And obviously I am quite dark featured, so people automatically thought I was from the same culture as him. And I was like, no, that's not...
He's actually Greek.
Yeah, Cypriot. And I'm not Cypriot.
I am.
Like I thought so with your olive skin. I was like, she's definitely not just Australian. It's not the golden tan that you guys get over there. That us a lot in England just get rain constantly. But no, they deemed me as him. And from the song, and I made a joke out of it. Put up in the back. I think I've taken down the video now. I don't know if it's still up. It might be. I'll have to have a look afterwards. But I'm dancing to Mr. Still Your Girl Is Back. And I also did the one to the Peter Andre song as well. And it made my mates buckle. And that's what started growing my platform, because I think people realise that a bad story about me, and I always say to people, if it ever happens to you, it's today's news and tomorrow's shit paper. And it's true. Like it'll be old news. It's the same with anything in life, whether it be, I don't know, that you've had a really horrible day with your boss. You'll forget about it in 2 days' time and you'll be all right. Like I always say that to people. And I think that sort of taught me a lot about social media and about the side of trolling that I never knew existed. I was like, I'm just posting these videos out here just for my own fun, sort of not really taking it seriously.
Yeah. And I can just see by what you sometimes post or the comments, there's so much, I don't know, like it seems like there's a lot of drama as well in the trans community sometimes. I don't want to go into the details, but it seems like there's a lot of drama.
Yeah. I think I just wish the community was different. It used to be. I don't know why it's changed, but I wish it would go back to how it was. I think lockdown really messed a few of us up. It's become like it's some big competition of who can swing their dick bigger in the community. And if you haven't transitioned the traditional way, and I did it a little bit different, I self-medicated, never recommend it to anybody. I made myself really poorly. I was desperate for hormones. And I knew that was how I could get hormones because I watched somebody from America do it online. I was like, oh, well, I can do this. No, I was buying cattle testosterone offline and nearly killed myself.
Wait.
So this is why.
Wait.
Yeah.
We need to talk about that. Yes, because I want to ask about hormones. So in Australia, essentially, I don't know how hard it is to get hormones, but if a young person came to me and they identified as trans, I would send them to a specialist and we get them either on puberty blockers as soon as possible or hormones. But in order to receive, it's really interesting. As a psychologist, we use called the DSM-5 to diagnose, but gender dysphoria is the one condition that needs to be medically approached. So whenever we come across that, we straight away need to consult with, medical professionals so they can either go on puberty blockers, which essentially stops puberty, and then, on the hormones. What's it like over there? And how did you come to self-medicating?
So in the UK, trans healthcare is absolutely awful. And if the Prime Minister is watching this, please pull your finger out your arsehole and do something, because it is really important. You've got trans people dying every single day because we're waiting for surgeries and treatment.
Yeah.
So I presented it as trans at my GP. They referred me across to the Gender Identity Clinic in 2016, in the July, I think it was.
Yeah.
And this was before I publicly came out. I did it like when I was socially transitioning, because I publicly came out at 18. Like I socially transitioned at 15, like between friends and like school and stuff. But I never really had social media until 18 because my parents were very anti it. And sort of me doing that and then sort of waiting for years. As a nutshell, in the UK, I was only seen last August for my first ever appointment. That first appointment in the UK means that you were seen by a psychologist and you were given your first signature for gender dysphoria. You then are seen by a nurse that speaks to you. You have to write, I think every gender clinic is different in terms of NHS in the UK, but this is what mine did. They made me write an autobiography on myself about my story and about how I came out as trans. I then spoke to a doctor that did a physical exam, so my height, my BMI, all that sort of stuff. And then I met with a second psychologist that then diagnosed me with gender dysphoria. I was already on hormones at this point, so I had both signatures done. I'd already had top surgery done privately, and they've told me now that I've got to wait 6 months to be seen again to find out where my place is on the bottom surgery list in the UK. Bottom surgery list has now closed for any new referrals because there is such a backlog, and I have been waiting since 2016 to be seen and have lower surgery. That it's trans healthcare is so expensive. Like my top surgery, I was very lucky that the company that did mine, Cosmedicare, Jill is brilliant. She's a mum of a transgender daughter herself, so she makes it affordable and fair. She donated money out of her own back pocket, not even the company's. She put £600 towards my surgery because she knew how hard I was working. And she accommodated me so well. I paid £6,790 for my surgery. Now,
Wow.
for women to get a boob job, they don't need diagnosis, they don't need surgery signatures, they don't need a gender dysphoria diagnosis. But for somebody like me that lives in their own body and just wants to live comfortably, because binding is painful. It's like, a corset that women wear.
Yes. Yes. So yes, tell us a little bit about what binding is, because I did have a client who told me a little bit about it, and there's just so much to know. So for the listeners, can you please explain a little bit about binding and then a little bit about top surgery and what it involves?
So with binding, it is basically compressing your chest to appear flat, like what I've currently got at the moment. And it can consist of you taping, so using, I think I might actually have some to hand. Hang on. I do. This is my scar tape though, but it's very similar to this. So it's like the plasters that you get in the hospitals if I take it out.
A very thick tape.
Yeah, it comes across. So they're normally a bit bigger than this. It's like, is it kinesiology tape, however you pronounce it?
No.
We get that in the UK and we basically put it across. And bearing in mind, you have to cover your nipples, because if you don't cover your nipples, you're going to rip skin and it hurts. But you can either tape and hold it down. But the problem is with taping, doesn't have the bigger lads who have got the bigger chests, doesn't really work for them, doesn't appear flat. But with taping, I did it in the Dominican, and I am telling you, the blisters, it rips your chest. Like even binding, you can't wear a binder for over 12 hours because then you start compressing your internal organs. The way I describe it is that you are wearing a corset, but up here, but as tight as on the tightest runk you can possibly get it. And some lads are like, I always speak to lads about binding breaks and taping breaks massively, like anybody that I speak to and give advice to or coaching or anything like that. Because if you bind too long or you don't bind safely and correctly, you can damage your chest for top surgery, which means that you, one, might not be applicable, or two, your results are severely affected. And that's why some people do end up with not the greatest of top surgery results. And it's not their fault. I get what it's like. Some of the bigger lads, I was lucky that I didn't really have much coming out as trans, but then injecting estrogen, I ended up going from, I think I was a B cut, really flat chested, originally going to have peri, which is like keyhole incisions, to then having a double mastectomy with double D tits. And I was like, what the hell? But I thought at the end of the day, I thought I froze my eggs. I can have kids in the future. I don't care. They're coming off either way at this point. But with top surgery,
to consider,
there's so much, literally.
If I have children, breastfeeding, like there's so much you've brought up, squishing my organs just by, And the amount of, I guess, discomfort you have to go through just to feel like yourself on the inside. Yeah, it's a new
I
level of empathy that I'm feeling right now.
I guess the way I describe dysphoria is, imagine that you are being waterboarded and you're screaming and no one can hear you, and you see yourself like completely free, completely fine, living the life that you've always wanted, and you're not in that moment. That is how I describe dysphoria to people. It's not hormones and surgeries are going to cure it. I had really bad dysphoria about my whole self until I started hormones. That got a little bit better. I then got top dysphoria. I then had my top surgery. I've then had problems down there, leading to me getting a hysterectomy in the next few months. When that goes, I'm going to want lower surgery. It is like a domino effect. And even after lower surgery, I sometimes, my dysphoria isn't great at times, but sometimes it's absolutely fine. I
Mm.
compare it to like, it's like depression. It's something that's always going to be there. You just have to learn how to dust yourself off of and just deal with it and think, "Do you know what? It's not going to beat me today." And it's like, I look my fear in the face every single day and wonder, am I man enough for the world?
Mm.
And it's
Mm.
horrible because I think trans men are so scared. If you don't have a beard and you're
Yeah.
not masculine presenting because of male stereotypes. And it's not even just coming down to being trans at this point. Like, even normal, like, say males, not normal, but males that are biological males that stay biological males, there's that precedent they've got to be these big brawly men that have got to be into their football in England,
Oh.
or into their rugby, and go drinking with the lads and crack jokes about girls and sleep with however many girls because their friends are doing it. There's so much that not even just trans people have to feel like we have to live up to fit into male society, but also that even biological men have to fit into. And this is why I always say to people, transitioning isn't just transitioning to a gender, because everybody transitions in their life regardless of what we go through. And that's what I try and say to people, that if you can never, I always say this, nobody will ever understand what a transgender person goes through unless you've gone through it yourself. You
100%.
can empathize, you can try and understand, but you won't ever know what it feels like. And I ruffled a few allies' feathers recently. They were telling me, well, I know what it feels like because I've watched people go through it. I
Mm.
said, yes, you've watched. And somebody used an analogy, I won't mention names, but they said because they don't like their boobs, that means they know what gender dysphoria is like. Gender dysphoria, you have to feel gender dysphoria to be transgender. And I know that's a very blasé opinion, because gender dysphoria to me is, and I don't speak for the whole community, I just speak for myself, because this is what I always say, because people see me as a creator that is trans and thinks, oh, I'm not Dylan Mulvaney and I'm not Caitlyn Jenner, unfortunately, guys. As much as I'd love their following, I'll never speak for a whole community of people. I speak for myself, and if people agree, they agree. If they don't, they don't.
Mm. Mm.
And that's what I say to people. We're all different, regardless of like me being trans. I'm
Yes.
still just Demitri that just was born in the wrong body.
Exactly.
And
I think it's important to point that out, that what we're speaking about today may not apply to everyone. Everyone is different, but I might just quickly define. So gender dysphoria, we've all heard of body dysphoria or muscle dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is the distress felt by people whose sense of being male or female differs from the gender they are assigned at birth based on their sex. So they feel that, like you said, they're in the wrong body, and this can cause so many secondary impacts: distress, anxiety, depression, negative self-image, a strong dislike for your sexual anatomy. And it's really interesting because it's in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, but it's not just a mental illness. It's the mismatch from the experienced gender, assigned gender at birth. So I'm just curious, how do trans people feel about the term gender dysphoria, or how do you feel about it? Do you think it's necessary? Do you think no, it's just a physical thing?
so a lot of people argue the toss about being gender dysphoria being a mental health problem. In my opinion, it is. Like, hating your own gender and hating your own body that much is a mental turmoil. It's not like gender dysphoria. You don't just have gender dysphoria, you end up triggering loads of other mental health problems that, Jesus, I've got anxiety and depression. Like, there's so many things that I have that relate to my dysphoria. And for me personally, I do think the diagnosis needs to be there, because
Yeah.
one, there's a lot about these transitioners at the moment, and I have my own opinion on things, and it's one of those things that it's a bit hit and miss, that I stir a pot and it's not a beehive that I want to really stir.
Mm.
But in terms of it, I do think that to be actually transgender, you need to have gender dysphoria, not just body dysmorphia. I mean, like, body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria are very similar, but they're completely different. Like, transgender people who have gender dysphoria tend to have body dysmorphia as well because we hate our body parts. But
Mm.
that's where the differentiation is. And I think that there needs to be, I get with the GIC waiting list being ridiculously too long, it needs to be shortened. But I do understand with NHS, you have to have lived as your assigned gender for 2 years, which I think needs to be done. Like, you have to live publicly, socially, like, and I think for me, in terms of gender dysphoria, some people may say I've rushed my transition. In my opinion, I haven't. I did what I did because I needed to make myself happy, and that's my own prerogative. I think the one thing I want to say to people, and there's a lot of judgment, especially on TikTok, because of big trans creators, everyone's transition is personal to them. They do not have to rush it. They don't have to fit your narratives of what you think a woman or a trans man or a trans woman should be. Like, it's like gender dysphoria. I can't sit there and say what I think gender dysphoria should be
Yeah.
because everyone's experience of gender dysphoria is different. Some people might have a dysphoria of something that I don't have, and some people might not really have much dysphoria, but some people might just be so overwhelmed with dysphoria. And I come across so many people on a daily basis that are so different, and there's no way to really measure it, which I think is so hard to try and navigate it in terms of healthcare and stuff. And I think if they put somebody like me in a room with all these psychologists like yourself, and we turn around and go, well, this is how we feel, this is what we think that you guys need to do to support us, open a two-way conversation, because at the moment it just seems like biological versus transgender,
Mm.
and we're at war with each other when we should be having a Switzerland in the middle, waving the white flag, going, come on, guys, we'll all sit at a table. Because I always say there's a lot of, everyone loves to talk about toilets when it comes to trans people. It seems to be the hot topic of conversation
What was
of
that?
who goes to what toilets, so like restrooms. So
Oh,
which
like
toilet
public
does,
toilet.
yeah, how do
What do
toilets
people
work for trans
ask?
people? They say that, so there's a lot in the UK that trans women shouldn't be in women's spaces, and that because it's making women's spaces unsafe. I always say to people, if you're going to say trans women are predators, then you can't just tell a predator just because of what they look like. Women are predators, biological women are predators,
Yeah.
but I feel like trans women in the press it's disgusting. They criminalize them so much. They make them out
Yes.
to be these big, bad, horrible people. And I know trans women that are absolutely lovely and brilliant, and they're so caring. They just, but it's never spoken about. If I go into a male bathroom with the parts that I still have, and there might not be a cubicle, and I don't have an STP, what am I going to do? I can't exactly pop a squat over the urinal, can I? I could get sexually assaulted in the male toilets, but that's never spoken about. Trans men are always, as horrible
Mm.
as it sounds, we're pushed to the side because of how much bad negative stuff there is about trans women, that 9 times out of 10 it's not true, and it's written by people that aren't even transgender, that have bigoted
Yes.
views. And I'm just sat there going, this is why people don't like us, because of stupid idiots online with their narratives. And there's so many people in my community, I hate it. There's misinformation out there that, because they see us attacking each other, they see us calling each other out, which is, I hate calling people out. But at the same time, if I don't, then people look at me going, well, why are you sitting quiet when that's
Yeah, I
happening?
think when
And
you have a
it's,
platform, people expect you to speak out about certain topics. Oh my gosh, let's go back to the start. So we were talking about how UK healthcare system is really poor, and it doesn't sound like it's just for transitioning. I've been told ADHD is really hard to diagnose, whereas in Australia we are very blessed. And like I said, gender dysphoria is the one condition we need to treat medically, because in order to quote unquote get the hormones or get what, the medication, you have to have that diagnosis. So psychologists do play a role in that. But tell me about what led you to self-medicate and potentially put your life at risk for hormones.
I will always say to anybody, if you are watching, if you are self-medicating, please go and get your testosterone checked by your doctor. If you've been doing it for 6 months or more, they have to bridge prescribe you, because it is classed as self-harm. If they don't bridge prescribe you, they have to monitor, because they have a duty of care as your practitioner and your healthcare provider to make sure that you are injecting yourself with hormones safely. Because if you inject too much, it converts back to estrogen. You inject too little, you get a whole other lot of problems, and it can cause you to get things like pericarditis, like I had at 19, and potentially they still are trying to work out if I had a mini heart attack or not. They can't work it out. My heartbeat's never been normal since. And what led me to sort of do that is because I would have only just started hormones back in, I want to say September. I would have only just started hormones in September if I wouldn't have self-medicated. Now I've been
Last
on
year?
hormones. Yeah, because of the
What?
wait list. Yeah.
So you would
So
have
that is
gone, because this gender dysphoria and gender concerns, it's such a time pressing issue. You need to get on it straight away. That's what we were trained, 15, puberty, young kids, like you need to consider these early because time is such a crucial factor, and let alone the mental stress that would have on you. So if you didn't self-medicate, you would have been what, 22, 21?
I would have been, if I wouldn't have been self-medicating, I would have been 23.
with
So I
no
would have only
no
just gone on to hormones. Oh,
with no hormone.
so with no hormones. So I would have been, so I can't work it out now. So I'm 23 now. So I would have been, yeah, I would have only just turned 23 in the August. So I literally would have started hormones in September after the 29th, because I had my gender dysphoria diagnosis come through the 1st of September, and I had my surgery on the 7th of September. And that's what I was waiting for, because they wouldn't operate on me without it. No surgical provider will in the UK, unless you've got gender dysphoria and you've got a signature saying this is what you've got.
Mhm.
They won't operate on you. No, I don't know about any other places, but
And
they
why
tend
didn't
to.
they diagnose you earlier? Why didn't they diagnose you at 15 or 16 with gender dysphoria?
My mum and dad said to me that they wanted me to make sure I was 110% sure.
Right.
So I understand it. Like, I am in full support of my parents doing that. Not every parent is going to do that. My mum said to me to make sure that I was 110% sure she wanted me to go through female puberty. Now, some people might go, oh, your parents are horrible for doing that. I don't think they were. I think that they maybe realised, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I was so sure. And I said to my mum, I was like, no, I don't want this. I don't want this. And I turned around at 18 and said, can I, blah, 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 blah. I didn't tell my mum I was self-medicating. She actually only found out from my TikToks. She didn't know the whole time. And
What?
when she found out, I best believe she told me off, but she understood why I did it, because the wait is so long that people don't realise that if, like, the hormones that I'm on, that a biological man can go and get those just if he's got a little bit of low testosterone and he
Yes.
needs a booster. I have to have a whole diagnosis to be able to get the same thing.
It's messed up. And I know a lot of men in the fitness industry, the gym industry, it is so easy to get, metabolic steroids, testosterone, all this.
That's what I was using.
It's really unfair. I didn't realize this until now, but for someone who has such a time sensitive condition, they make it so hard. So why is it, I guess, so challenging to get them? So you were led to self-medicate, and yeah, take us a little bit through that process, because you would have been quite young and you're doing it in secret. I imagine that would have been very scary for you.
I was absolutely petrified, and I told a porcupine when I stopped self-medicating at 19, but I started at 18. Um, I told people I was prescribed hormones because I was petrified if anyone in the community found out I was doing it, it was sort of shunned upon at that time. It was
Yes.
sort of, you were frowned upon for doing it. And it wasn't until there is a guy called Seb, there's also a guy called Zach. They both clicked that I was doing this, and they turned around and went, Demitri, you're going to seriously end up in a box if you carry on. This is so dangerous.
Mm.
And it eventually got outed on social media that I was doing what I was doing. And eventually, when it came to me sort of coming back to social media, I turned around and went, yeah, I used to self-medicate. I don't recommend it. This is why I did it. And I thought, you know what? And that's why I lay myself bare on social media, because the way I see it is, even within the community, any community, you're always going to have people out there that will try and dig up your old skeletons. I put my old skeletons out there, and if anybody asks me anything, I'm always 110% honest, and I normally make a video about it, because I'd rather put my story out there and it come from the horse's mouth itself than somebody with a twisted version and a twisted narrative to try and paint me out to be a bad guy, because that's the way that I see it. Is I will always say to people, it doesn't matter if you've known somebody who's transgender for years, if you've only just seen them, their story, regardless of them being like me, who are publicly out there on social media, is their story alone to tell whenever and to whoever they feel comfortable, regardless of me being on TV. If you didn't know or see any of me on social media and we met in the street, it's my prerogative to tell you that I'm transgender if I want to and if I feel safe to do so. Not to, for, I don't know, maybe one of your friends might know me and they go, oh, well, you know, he's transgender, right? One thing I hate, is being introduced as, oh, that's Demitri, he's my transgender friend. And I
Ooh,
look at people and go, I'm not some little person in a petri dish for you to poke and parade about and what, because having it's like when having a gay best friend was trendy, it's now having a trans best friend. And I'm just like, we're not your puppets.
yes.
We're human beings. We were just unfortunate. I always say this: I'm a man within my own right. I'm never claiming to be biologically a male because after I've seen of what some of what the male species are like, I don't want to be one. No, thank you, not my gay. I'd rather be in touch with my feminine side, have a bit of like a paternal, like
Yes.
maternal side to me. Want to wrap people in cotton wool. Rather have that than think with my penis, like some men do. I'd rather have that. And like I will always say to people, like, regardless of anything, like I'm just me, and people can take me as they want to. But I always say I'm sick of people judging my community on what one person has done. You shouldn't hold somebody accountable for a whole community accountable because what somebody's made a stupid mistake,
Yeah.
and we see it online recently with obviously with all in the UK, we all know about it. These live battles. I'm not sure if you guys did them over in Australia, where it's a leaderboard and people get competitive and they start being horrible. It's very bad in the UK. It's very dramatic.
Okay.
And it seems like these trans people do the leaderboard and they all come at each other. And I'm sat there going, what the hell? And I'm sat there going, you're
Mm,
literally young. You're younger than me. You're like 19, you're 20. And I'm thinking, I sit there and I go, people are going to look at you and think we're all like that. And I will always say to people with wholehearted chest, it doesn't matter what you identify as, who you want to love,
yeah.
what conditions you've got wrong with you, take that away from somebody and hold that person accountable for them as a person, not on what community or anything that they belong to, if that makes sense. And
Yes. Yeah.
there's preconceived judgment about us, and I hate it. I
Yeah.
absolutely hate it because we're not these big, bad, horrible people that J.K. Rowling paints out that goes round dressing up in man or women's clothes and we're going out to hurt individuals. Transgender people are probably going to be one of the loveliest people you ever meet. We wear
Yes.
our heart on our sleeves. We just want to be loved and accepted. We're not nine times out of 10, what you see about people trying to take away from women's rights, it's literally the left wing radicalists that are Jeffrey Marsh, and I am not ever going down that rabbit hole or on that subject on anything because I have very strong viewpoints on that person in particular. He
Mm,
was very, very damaging to people like me and what we stand for. And it's people like that that make whole communities look bad, that people think they're these big, bad, horrible people because of what they read or what they see. But in reality, we just want to live our lives without being hate crimed and live as a gender that we identify as. That eventually, no one's going to say boo to a goose, and we don't have to sign a document that says or tick on a box that we're transgender in fear of getting hate crimed. I just want to live my life as a male and
that's it.
go about my life and not have anybody.
You
And
summarized it.
that's all majority of us want. We don't want it.
You summarized it perfectly. We just want to be loved and accepted. And I think that's such a beautiful statement. Even I saw another post by an influencer who's quite out there, particularly with fashion. And he was saying that, when you go out on the street, yeah, you get a dirty look, but it's over and over and over again. And they're constantly exposed to it. But for us, it's just like, oh, look at, that person walking down the street. We might just, oh, that's a bit strange. But imagine for us, it's a passing moment. And I don't mean to say us and them, but what I'm basically saying is
Yeah.
you'd get exposed to this over and over again when you just want people to just mind their own business, get on with their day, because they don't realize that cumulative effect of different people commenting or judging or saying things. So I think just to be so super mindful if you're listening to this and you come across someone who may be vulnerable to that.
It's like me.
Yeah, exactly. So
But like I always say to people, it's like in terms of when you look at a transgender person, you look at somebody that might not pass as the gender they now identify as, you don't need to tell them. It will make them feel 10 times worse. You just like the best thing to say in terms of if you're not sure on someone's pronouns, go with they. It's the safest thing, they or them. It's gender neutral. You can't go wrong, and they will correct you. And if you turn around and just go, listen, I don't want to come across as offensive, but what pronouns do you go by? Because I don't want to offend you and misgender you. That's not what I'm about. But I always say to people, in terms of giving people a look or going, oh, what's that? Imagine your biggest insecurity and everybody is looking at you and you're walking down the street naked with your biggest insecurity showing and heighten it by 10. That's what a trans person feels like when we get those looks or those sly little comments, or it might be you calling me a girl on a post. I look at things, and as horrible as it is, a lot of trans people do this. We can have hundreds of nice comments. It takes one comment, and we're just like, oh,
Yes.
well, I look like a girl, so, and it triggers our dysphoria.
It's yes, 100%. And yeah, comments on social media, that's just other people projecting their own insecurity or their own hate onto others. How did you come to the point where you were self-medicating and you almost died? Tell me a little bit about that. And did that cause you to stop, or were you then prescribed hormones? What happened?
I was petrified, and I remember it like black as day. I was in Birmingham with my ex-girlfriend Chloe, and we had a bit of a barney. We had a bit of a barney, as couples do. She's my best friend still to this day. She has watched me transition. She actually watched me self-medicate. I didn't tell her. She lynched me, best believe. She told me off for it. She was also one of the reasons why I stopped, because I didn't want to let her down. And that girl will always have my heart. She's been there from the minute that I started my transition to now, and she's always going to be my best friend. I remember we were on a night out and we had an argument, and I remember this horrible feeling in my chest. I was drinking a pint and I collapsed to the floor. I don't remember anything after that point. I then wake up in Russell Hall with my mum at the side of the bed when I was in the ICU, and they were going, "Yeah, you nearly died, mate. Like, we think you've had a heart attack. You've definitely got pericarditis because that runs in your family. But yeah, we think you've potentially had a heart attack." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, not even. I wasn't. I was 20 at this point. I think I was 19, 20, coming up 20. It was just for my birthday. And I was like, what the hell? I was at my peak. I was really fit. I'll have an occasional McDonald's here and there, and I smoke, but that's about the most unhealthy thing that I do. Not
Yeah.
a big drinker. And I was thinking, I'm at my physical point. What the? And obviously they found in my bag, because I had my overnight bag, because we were staying at a hotel, and they
Mm.
looked in the bag and my testosterone shot was in there. And that is when they found out. And my mum didn't know, because obviously I was an adult. I made the doctors not tell her. I was like, please don't tell her. She's going to murder me. They just turned around and said that I got spiked, because I just turned around and was like, I don't want my mum to know, because she'd worry more. And mum, when you do this, I'm really,
Yes,
really
yes.
sorry that I lied to you, but I was protecting you.
But do you
And it was that.
for a fact it was the testosterone that made you unwell?
It was because I wasn't injecting proper testosterone that bodybuilders use. I brought it off a black market website online. I thought, oh yeah, £15 for a vial, really cheap.
Just some cheap
I
test.
injected testosterone that is meant to be used on cattle, so farm animals. That is
You
what
were
caused me.
injecting cattle testosterone without even knowing it.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
wasn't having my blood
God.
work checked. That's how dangerous it is, and that's what caused me
And how
my
long was that
problem.
going on for?
Just over a year.
1 year. What impacts does that have if someone is injecting what they think is testosterone, but it's cattle testosterone? What does that do to your body?
It made me very angry. I will not sit here and admit that I'm a saint. I was verbally horrible. I was like, my mum will tell you, like, if you ever have the privilege of speaking to her, I was horrible. I had a mouth on me. Like, I wasn't with my fists. I was nasty with my mouth, and I hurt a lot of people in that time, really, really bad, and I regret it now. And I became the nastiest version of a trans man you could become, and I got cancelled because of some of the things I was doing, and it made me. I generally felt like I had bipolar or something, because I was just like, no, this, like, I wasn't myself, and I was like, this is something that's not right. But I just continued doing it, thinking, oh, that, like they say about
Yeah,
roid rage, it
roid
could just be
rage.
that.
Everyone says
Yeah.
you're gonna get angry.
But then it got progressively worse, and I'd start going to the gym, and my chest would hurt, and I go, oh, maybe I've just done a little bit too much weights. And then I was drinking on a night out, and I don't know. I had an argument, obviously, with Chloe. It stressed me out even more, and I think that's what triggered it. And I'm more firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And me collapsing down to the floor got me to stop, and actually got the doctors to go, it's classed as self-harm. We need to take over your care now. We need to intervene now. You're not going to have hormones for 2 months till it's out your system. We're
Yep.
going to flush it out your system. They kept me in hospital for a week. And then ever since then, my GPs have overtaken my care, and my nurse at my GPs is absolutely brilliant. She fights my case so many times with my gender clinic in terms of getting things across to them, because they keep saying, we can't find your blood results, and we're like, that on the system. And they just keep emailing and sending rubbish emails, because it feels like when you've got a gender clinic and you've got a GP, it's like you're trying to marry them both together and they're both not quite fitting because one's not working. And it's just like, and they're like, well, you can't have this done because we've said this. And my GP's going, no, he needs this done because this is happening. We've known our patient for X amount of time. You've only seen him twice on a video call. And it's just like they're arguing. I'm like, listen, this is my life you're fucking jolting around with and my healthcare. Can you just sort it out, please?
I don't mean to laugh, but I
understand
like what you're saying. I understand. And that would be so frustrating for you. But it really saddens me that it had to get to that point for you to be seen and treated adequately.
A lot of trans men, and it isn't spoken about, lose their life to self-medication. And it's something that I'm on the forefront of getting stopped in the UK. Don't get me wrong, I have had trans men, whether they've tried to get me cancelled on social media to do it, or they generally wanted to know, how do I get testosterone before being medicated or being gendered? That's what they ask me. I turn around and I say, I'm not advising you. I said, but there is one way around it. You can go to your GP, and under Mental Health Act, they can actually take it to the NHS board. It's very rare cases that it happens, and I would not gatekeep this information. I've only recently found out about this from another trans individual that did it. That's a close friend of mine. He's went to the GPs with his mum, and he has years of psychological background in terms of suffering with depression. If you have that, you can literally go with that documentation to your GP, and you have years of even getting a psychological assessment of a private psychologist and go in, this is what I need you to do. They can bridge prescription you, because if you turn around and say, well, listen, and it's as horrible as it sounds, sometimes as trans people, we do have to pull the mental health card to get actually listened and heard to, because
100%.
being a minority, we don't get listened to. And the amount of arguments I have had to try and get my hysterectomy for the last 3 years of being constantly in pain and bloated and my ovaries twisted and me still bleeding whilst being on a blocker and on testosterone. 3 years I have fought with my blooming gender clinic, because luckily my gynecologist has turned around and gone, well, we're overriding them now. We're going to go do it anyway. Your mental health, because my hormones aren't regular. They're too high in estrogen or they're too high in testosterone. There's no middle point. So I'm up and down like a yo-yo. And for me, it is mentally draining me. So this is why I'm so flippant on social media, and I'm apologising so much, because not only did I start ADHD medication a month ago, I've got hormone imbalance. My body's constantly chronically in pain. And I'm just here, there, and everywhere. And I'm thinking, I don't know when I'm coming and going. And then I'm going through a transition, trying to navigate being medicated for my ADHD, trying to navigate my transition and when I'm going to get my baby maker out. And I'm thinking, and then navigating work and social media. I'm just like, my brain's like, and it just doesn't stop.
No wonder you're doing this podcast at midnight. You probably don't sleep, but also
I sleep 4 hours and seem to function.
Oh my gosh. But when you said earlier, when you noticed you were really angry when you were on the cattle testosterone without realizing, I was thinking, oh, that sounds like, ADHD. You can have outbursts, or autism. And I guess, when did neurodiversity come into the picture? How? Because again, that is so under-recognized, underdiagnosed. And in Australia during the pandemic, it was this huge movement of women realizing they had undiagnosed ADHD. And that's how I blew up on TikTok. Actually, I blew up because I did commentary on Married at First Sight, but then I sort of blew up when I started talking about ADHD.
I remember you because you did it for Tom from Married at First Sight.
Yes.
I believe you spoke about Tom. Tom is, when I say he's one of my boys, he is literally, I will shout that boy's praise from the rooftops. I thought I recognised you, but I absolutely love Tom. He is my spirit animal.
Because in the UK, you watch the Australian maths, is that right? Or do you have?
Yeah, I love it. It's more dramatic.
Yeah, because whenever my UK followers will be like, spoiler alert, don't tell us what happened, I was like, they're watching the Australian version. That is so funny. There's more drama here.
You guys get it before us. Yeah, that's why we love it. I'll sit there and watch it. I'm like, I want to watch this. And I actually had never watched Married at First Sight until Tom was on. And I remember I messaged him on social media. I commented on one of his posts. This is how we became mutuals. And I was like, I'm so proud of you. And then me and Tom, I don't know if we friendly flirted, but then I had to tell Tom I was straight and let him down. But I love Tom to pieces. If I was gay, Tom would be the first man that would be for me. I say this, he's a gorgeous human being, and he does a lot for the community. He stands up for trans rights and non-binary rights. Like he's one of the people that's educated me on a lot of stuff, and I take my hat off to him. He's done it on national television. he got dragged left, right, and centre, and he's somebody that I look up to. And I go, do you know what? If Tom can do it, so can I. And he gave me advice before, obviously, when my TV show came out and how to handle things, and I
Yes.
was really grateful for him. And
Oh,
he's brilliant, but we completely just got off topic.
I feel like we need a series on this podcast because there's so many different conversations we can unpack. But
Literally.
okay, I want to talk a little bit about surgery, because even you've said things like STP, I have no idea what that means. Even bottom surgery, I'm like, what? Even yeah. Tell me, what are the options out there when it comes
Oh God.
to
Right.
transitioning? Because all I know is, yes, you can get your breasts removed. I know you can transition from a male to a female by getting, the bottom tucked in. But that's all I really know. What are the options?
So the way I like to describe it, and if any trans females do watch this and I am politically incorrect, I am going to try and describe this as best as I can because I'm not a trans woman. Trans women have it harder to aesthetically transition, but their surgeries are so much easier than ours. They have, I think, their surgeries, they have obviously estrogen, which I think they can get. I don't know if they can get it in an injection, but I know they can get it in like a patch or like Esto gel, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I'm not clued up on how it's administered, but it's similar to obviously how testosterone is administered. They can have facial feminization surgery, which is what Dylan went through. They can have their Adam's apple shaved, voice feminization surgery, like fillers, breast augmentation. But trans women can actually grow breasts without having a boob job because of estrogen makes them grow breast tissue. Shame it doesn't get rid of trans men with their breast tissue, but it makes trans women grow breast tissues. There also is something that is never really spoken about with their hormones. Now, trans women, I think some trans women do word it wrong and they go, well, we get period cramps. They should word it like we get things that are similar to period cramps because when they're on estrogen, they're blocking their testosterone in their testicles. Unless they've had them removed and had lower surgery, which they sort of cut down the middle and tuck it all in and remove everything, and then they have to dilate. And it's go watch your video because it's so detailed in how to explain. I could be here for hours going into the process, but they are blocking their testosterone, which is their main hormone maker, in their balls. So they get like a cramp and like a dull aching pain that is what a woman feels like when she gets a period. So even though they don't get periods, they have very similar experiences to womanhood. They just can't grow a baby or have a period. And I think those are the only things that breastfeed. They can't breastfeed because they ain't got milk ducts. Those are the only things that they can't do that a biological woman can. And it's the same with like trans men. We have hormones. We can have trans women can also get like laser hair therapy for like facial hair and body hair. Yes. Trans men can get uneven hair transplants and things like. There's so many surgical procedures that they can have done. Like
many. I just went top bottom, but even the voice, even getting your voice change, the shape of your face, the hair, there's so much detail that goes into it. Thank you for explaining that. But yes, continue. When trans men.
So trans men, it's very similar to trans women. So we can get like hair transplants, we can get beard transplants. I can proudly say this is all natural and I've grown this myself without using anything like minoxidil.
Love that.
I praise my dad for his genes and my mum, but my little brother can't grow anything. So he gets a little bit jealous, I think. I think that's why we have a bit of sibling rivalry, but you know how it is. That'll come in time. I keep telling him he's only a baby. He's 20 now and I say he's not a baby. He's taller than me, and he'd absolutely leather me if I ever went 2-2 with him. He scares me. He's taller than me, so if I ever have a problem, I go, "Oi, can you help me out?" Because I'm only 5'6" and he towers over me. But there's top surgery, so you can get peri, which is it's keyhole incision. So they cut around the nipple and they pull it off, and then they can resize the nipple, and there's minimal scarage. Or I'll show you what I've got. So I've got double incisions, which is 2 big slits under, and then nipple grafts. So I have my nipples resized. So they cut my nipples off and then stick them back on and resize them.
Yeah. And remove the breast tissue?
Yeah, remove the breast tissue. So some trans men opt to have some of it kept in. I opted to have all of mine taken out because I tested positive for the BRCA gene, which for those that don't know what the BRCA gene is, it's the gene that means you could potentially have breast cancer, which people who don't speak about testosterone heightens the chance of getting breast cancer. infertility, cervical cancer, and ovarian cancer is heightened. And you can also develop
Wow.
something called endometriosis. They gatekeep that from you, and I didn't even know that till my gynecologist appointment, because trans clinics do not seem to tell us a lot in the UK that. Don't know why,
So
but
that's one thing you're saying is they don't tell you the risks of going on testosterone. And you just said there's so many risks of
yeah.
different types of cancer. That's such an important thing I think should get mentioned.
So they tell us the risks in a way, but they don't delve in. So I obviously do so much research on it before I go onto any medication, and maybe that's just me. They'll tell us sort of the most common risks, but there's still that chance that you can get your heightened chance of cancer. And I actually had to correct an American guy today on live that was sat there going, "Oh yeah, it's helped me reduce cancer." I was like, "Mate, what are you talking on? Like, do you know what I mean?" Like, oh, my mate's messaging me going, "How do I get brand deals?" Go away, Parker. I'll give you the advice later. This is what I mean. My friend's got a really big social media platform. His name's Parker. Parker Brett on TikTok. Everyone needs to go check him out. I'll give him a little shout out because
Okay.
he's very much like me. He's got a very large platform that I will happily say that I am very jealous of. But he does good. He does God's work. We're like this. He's one of my really good friends.
Love
But
that.
mate,
Love
I can't remember what I was saying. I've just lost track.
It's okay. ADHD vibes. Oh, what we were actually talking about before we got on
Yeah.
whatever we were talking about was the neurodiversity part. How did you discover that you had not only ADHD,
That was it.
because I feel, especially in Australia, it's a lot, not easier, but ADHD is, assessments are easier to come by than an
Yeah.
autism assessment because it's such a specialized area. How did you discover you were neurodivergent?
So my mum and dad always knew. They always said there was something. I was a little bit. The word's offensive now, but it wasn't back in the day. I was like, I'm going to put in quotation marks, bright, a little bit different. I had special interests in things, and I was very different to all the other kids. I was more emotionally like there, and like I was always wanting to hang around with adults and people older than me, but I would had the naivety that I couldn't tell danger. Like I always said, like my mum would. I still can't cross the road at the age of 23, but I can still nearly get hit by cars and buses. And that just says it all. I was one of those kids that has no sense of danger. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I will, like, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, yeah, I still do put myself in dangerous situations because I get the thrill of it. And that's how I've always been. But from a young age, they tried to tell my mum it was hormone imbalance. They put me on the pill at the age of 11 that made me get endometriosis, which is very common for, pardon me,
It's okay.
that is very common for females in the UK because we don't get diagnosed with ADHD. And when I was a female, ADHD or autism, because it's very hard to diagnose in females. For whatever reason, it gets blamed as hormonal or it's puberty, and sometimes it's not. And this is why that you get a lot of people that don't get their diagnoses that are either trans men now, non-binary, or they're just still biological women that don't get diagnosis until their adulthood. Now, I went without a diagnosis till I was 19 years of age, and I actually got sectioned, and that's what they triggered them to diagnose me. And they were like, "Oh, we're going to put you through an ADHD and an autism assessment." I was like, my mum's been begging for this for years, and I had meningococcus septicemia when I was a baby, not long after the meningitis vaccine, and they're trying to link it back to that could be one of the reasons why, with me having meningitis, that it could have caused my ADHD and my autism.
Yeah.
When I got that diagnosis, there wasn't that much support. They kind of were just like, "Yeah, here's your diagnosis.
Yes.
You can have counselling." And they just left me to it. And I was like, "Well, I've just come out as trans. I'm trying to find out who the hell I am. Now you're telling me I've got things wrong with me. So what? And now you're telling me I'm not going to be seen for I'm not going to be seen for years by an NHS, and I need to save my surgery because you're going to tell me it's going to be 5 years till I'm seen. What on earth am I going to do?" And I was sat there and I was like, I don't understand. Like, and I sat there and I felt lost. I felt like I was in a room, like I could be in a room full of people and nobody would see me.
Mm.
And that's why I do the job that I do now, because there is so many trans men and women out there that get these diagnoses, whether it just be gender dysphoria or they're neurodivergent like me, that we feel alone and nobody gets us, because being neurodivergent, having ADHD and autism, and everyone bowls me for my pronunciation of words, but I'm awful because I've got veneers and I lisp and whatever.
Mm.
But I always say to people, like, having those two things, it made like my whole life flipped on the upside down. And I was like, well, how do I navigate life now? Like, what are people going to think? I was petrified to tell people because I've always been a little bit quirky, right? And now it's sort of up at the point where I don't give a shit if people don't like me or not. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be my hyperactive, bubbly self, and it's got me this far. So Why
Yes.
should I ever hide who I'm going to be? And it's the same with people coming out as transgender. Like I always say to people, you just need to be yourself because no one can be like the world is a boring place, right?
Mm.
Like no one can be yourself better than yourself. So why would you want to be like anybody else? Because yourself is perfect, and just because you might not have found your people yet. Like I'm 23 years of age, my life isn't perfect.
You are
Jesus, I've
so
gone through.
young. You are so young.
I feel old though. I feel like I'm going great at 23. I feel like I'm in my 30s at
Oh
this
my
point, and
gosh.
people think I'm older.
When you
But
said you were
I,
23 at the start, I was like, "What?" I'm like, "You're
everyone gets
so
shocked.
young." I don't think you know how young you are, but yes, you're so right. So many people get slapped a diagnosis and it's like, "Okay, bye." And this is one of the reasons I get asked a lot, how do you get diagnosed? So in Australia, either a psychiatrist can diagnose or a psychologist, but you have to get diagnosed by a psychiatrist for medication if you want
Yeah.
medication. But then that's all they do. They prescribe, they assess, and they're like, bye. There's no treatment plan.
Oh,
People get this diagnosis. They're like, okay,
I
thanks.
had to wait ages for I had to go back to the clinic that I obviously got because I went through NHS right to like choose to get my medication this time. And at this point I was a bit like, okay, and they gave me a list of medication, and it just had. I don't read a lot, right? And I'll tell you what these documents that they sent me. They gave me like 6 different medications. Told me briefly what they did, and I was like, "What the like?" And it confused my little brain. So I just got to the point where I literally just turned around to the prescriber, and I was like, "Right, what medication isn't going to make me flip, isn't not going to affect my sleep, and is not going to suppress my hunger?" Little did I know they all suppress my hunger, and then I forgot to take them. Well, I've run
Mm,
out of medication. They've only just come today. When you don't have that medication, you feel it the next day because you are hungry and I've eaten my whole house out of house and home at the
yes.
moment. It's very much like I say to people that smoke marijuana. It's like having munchies when you come off that medication
Yeah.
because it's. And I know when I go back on my 60
What
milligrams tomorrow, my head is going to be.
if you don't mind me asking, are you on stimulants?
Yeah, I'm on listexamphetamine, I think it's called.
Okay. Yeah. There's
I
different
can't pronounce
names
it.
in different
Yeah,
countries, but
I'm
for
on a
those listening,
stimulant.
yeah, for those listening, stimulants are medication commonly prescribed for ADHD, which can suppress your appetite, which can be problematic, but it can be good for eating disorders. Because here we see a lot of comorbidity with eating disorders and ADHD. But you're saying you've noticed, yeah, your appetite has changed when you're not on them. Has it helped you at all? Like the medication, have you found a difference?
My brain feels quiet. For the
Yes.
first time in years, it's like I have peace. I don't get me wrong, I think I'm still getting used to them I'm a little bit antsy. It feels like I think it's just I'm blaming that down to hormones because it was like I was like that before anyway. But I think the first time I tried them, I thought I rang my mum thinking I was dying. Right? My jaw was going, my eyes were dying. I was like, "What on
Mm.
earth is this?" I didn't know that. Well, when I spoke to my mum about it, I knew what a stimulant was. I didn't realise it was legalised speed, and I was like, "What?" I was like, the only drug that I've ever done is cannabis. Like I've never done anything else. Of like, oh, I say I haven't. I've dabbled in other things, but I've never done anything that would make my brain go like, "Woo!" I rang my mum going, "What on earth?" But I FaceTimed and my jaw was. She was like, "It's fine. You're gonna get used to them. It will take a few days. It's a stimulant. It's legalized speed." And I looked at her, I was like, "What?" And
Yes.
she was like, "Yeah, it's legalized speed." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And I didn't realize. And until I started Googling, Googling, what is a
Googleizing.
stimulant?
That's
It was like legalized speed. This is, and I was like, oh my god, what? But I didn't read the information booklet because I was just like, at this point, ADHD is, are we really going to sit there and read 4 or 5 pages worth of information about what a side effect going to do? All I knew was that it's made me have the worst side effect for me is dry mouth. That's it. But I can tell I've not had them because my brain is going.
yes, yes. And it's so, yeah, because usually when people with ADHD take stimulants, it has the opposite effect. If someone without ADHD took stimulants, they'd feel really wired and, high, whatever. But when people take it, when they have ADHD, they feel calm. But it sounds like it takes a while to get to that point. Like there's still an adjustment period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So you
say
don't,
that to everybody. It's kind of like any medication, though. Like your body's getting used to it. And I think because I've never taken anything, I think I probably overthought it in my head and probably got myself into that state of mind where it was kind of like I don't know whether it was a placebo or if I just petrified myself when I found out it was legalized speed and with anxiety and like I
yeah.
have really bad health anxiety in general anyway. that I panicked and I was like, oh my God, what? And I think I did my blood pressure and everything. It was ridiculous. I thought, I can't submit that. I was like, I'll give it a couple of days. And then it's believe it or not, it's not too low and it's not too high. It's normal. And believe it or not, it was really high before I started. And now it's leveled. So I generally think, yeah, it's made me a lot, when I'm on it, obviously, not right now, but I'm normally a lot less chaotic and I'm a lot, because the worry for me, and I think with ADHD medication, was that it was going to change me as a person and remove my bubbly self. And in reality, it hasn't. I'm still that person. I'm just a little bit more reined in, so to speak. But it's not a major change. I'm still scatty as hell. I'm just more organised scatty as hell.
Organized chaos. And a lot of people say that ADHD medication going to change me. And I describe it as the Cinderella effect. Don't worry. At midnight, when it wears off, you're going to go back to the pumpkin and all the magic is going to wear off. So it doesn't actually change your personality. Okay. Before we wrap up, I also just want to know, you mentioned you're going to Canada, and if you're comfortable talking about it, tell us a little bit about that.
So I met somebody from TikTok called Ashley that lives over in Canada, and she is amazing. When I say that she's amazing, she is. Like, she's from the First Nations community. Like, her family, absolutely brilliant. Like, she's got ADHD, brother's got ADHD. Like, she understands how my brain works, so I'm not worried about going over there. And she is like, we were speaking about like transgender surgery in the UK, and I said that my personal opinion is I don't like the surgery results. Please don't take my word for it, but some of the results that I've seen, they look like a Greggs sausage roll. I'm sorry if anybody is eating a Greggs sausage roll right now.
A Greggs sausage roll?
A Greggs sausage roll. It's a chain restaurant, fast food place in the UK that has sausage rolls, and like it's like the famous thing that the UK's got is like a Greggs sausage roll. If you come here, you need to get one.
Okay, I will. Oh, I don't know. Okay, maybe I will. We'll see how I go.
No, but obviously it looks
about bottom surgery,
which is there's two different
females transitioning to males.
Yeah, there it's when I say you're better off watching the diagram video, don't watch the actual surgical procedure if you do have a weak stomach, because I don't have a weak stomach, and I was like, oh my God, what? It's such an intensive surgery, and for the UK, I don't think our trans healthcare surgeries in terms of lower surgeries is at the best, and it's pure potential. I really don't. So that's why I have looked into Montreal with Ash, and I'm going to speak to them when I'm over there and sort of potentially see if there is something with them that I can set up for us UK trans men to go over there with the world best surgeon. One of the world's best surgeons over there. I've seen their results. Like, they are some of the best that I've seen. That there's a way that we can get health insurance over there, or the UK, because they're part of our monarchy, can work with them and go, listen, we've got these people, maybe we'll pay you £3,000 fee to get them over there for the hospital fees per surgery stage, because it's 3 stages if you're having phalloplasty. And I don't know too much about, I think it's called Meta, but it's not, you can't penetrate with it. But phallo, they take the skin grafts, they build everything around it. It's such an in-depth, it'll probably get a banana if I speak about it in too much detail, because
well, I don't know anything. I didn't even know that transitioning to a man, creating a penis, was a thing. I didn't know about that. I thought maybe they wear strap-ons. I don't know. I didn't know there was actually.
My mum thought the exact same thing. My mum was like, so do you just, and I think there's always the common question is like, if a trans man's with a woman, does that make her a lesbian? No, because lesbians like women and trans men identify as men, even though they have women genitalias. And like, yes, I get genitalias need to be defined in terms of biology and in terms of hospital for treatment.
Yes.
It doesn't define who you are as a person. Like, for me, I'm put down in something that's called MX, which is a gender neutral term in terms of my title, but I'm on both registers at the hospital. As I later found out when I went for my egg retrieval, that I originally got referred to the sperm bank and not the egg retrieval clinic. So when I had to ring up and speak to her. I think she was like a 70-year-old lady by the sounds of her. I'm sorry if she does watch this and it was you that I was speaking to. I was like, I've been referred to the sperm clinic and I have not got sperm. She was like, well, you're a male. I was like, I'm a trans male. I'm a trans man with a vagina with eggs that need removing. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me put you through to somebody. And I think she felt awful. And I was like, listen, And I went, put me on loudspeaker or whatever. And I said, it's the lady who was, but I went, don't worry. I said, I get it. I said, I actually feel quite flattered that people thought I was biologically a man, but unfortunately I ain't got the facilities for that. And I made them buckle, and I've done it before. Like, I go for gynecology appointments, and I was told that once, you're in the wrong place. They went, have you not seen a man with a vagina? Made all these pregnant women that were going for these scans just buckle. My doctor, I'd never even met her for the first time because we'd only spoken on the phone during COVID.
Yeah.
Like, all the student nurses, because she invited them in when she was doing my scan. She was like, is it okay? I went, listen, they're never going to see a man with a vagina again. So yeah, sure, why not? But because I'm all about teaching people, and I'm all about, like, if I can help students that are coming into the medical profession, I don't care if they want to see what my foof looks like at the moment. Like, it's not a pretty sight. I've got bottom growth, which looks like I've got a mini penis. At the moment, it's not a pretty sight.
Just a trigger warning, we might get a bit graphic here, but so the hormones, do they make you grow down there?
Yeah, you know, a woman's clitoris is like, I think it's like 12 inches deep, and it comes out, so it looks like a mini penis. Google when you come off, out of curiosity, anybody that wants to Google it. Female to male, so FTM, bottom growth, and you have to treat it as a separate genitalia, and you have to keep it clean, because because testosterone can sometimes dry you out down there. It can cause you, like, I've had one, and like cysts or like friction burns, and they're painful when you get them underneath. And it's like, me and my friend Tommy say, it's lifting the car bonnet and cleaning under the hood is what we call it, and how to clean it to all these trans boys. But like, you need to clean it. Like, you need to treat it as a second genitalia, because essentially you're growing down there, it can get uncomfortable. If you're not cleaning it and you're getting pieces like your lint of your boxers stuck under there, it can cause a whole array of problems. And I didn't know about it until somebody told me about it, and I made a video about it, and I think that video ended up with like 60,000 views, and people were like, what? Bottom growth is it? And half the time my mates have gone, can we see a picture of it? And I've gone, do you know what? Yeah, fuck it, why not? This is what it looks like. But I'm that open with my friends, and I think, to the point is that my friends have said, after lower surgery, I'm just going to put my piece, like, when it's finished, in a group chat, being like, here it is. And then say to everybody else, you can subscribe for £20 a month.
What? Guys send dick pics all the time. So why is it any different?
Mine's a man-made one. I'm going to call it Builder Dick, because I get to pick the size, the length, and the girth. But I'm not going to go too big. It will always be circumcised as well. It'll always be circumcised.
Oh my gosh. So essentially, going back to the options of bottom surgery. So we know hormones can essentially grow out or extend the clitoris. What's then the next option or options?
So you can have, in terms of lower surgery, if you choose to. Not every trans man has to have lower surgery. Some opt not to, because it is an invasive procedure, and it is very painful. It's 3 operations for 3 different stages, and you're in denial for a long time if you do get fallow. I don't know much about meta, but I know they pull the clit out and they make it look like a more masculine down there, but you can't penetrate. Phalloplasty, they take a skin graft off your forearm, your thigh, or your stomach. For me, I'll be opting for my thigh, because I ain't having it off my arm. I was like, not doing it. I'll have it off my thigh. So they build a shaft around, like, they sort of roll it up, and they build it off the clitoris, because your clit gets really sensitive, so you'll still have feeling. And they obviously connect up all your urethra. You've already had your hysterectomy done at this point. They then put either a rod, which means you can bend it into shape and bend it into being hard, or you can have a pump, which they put the pump inside, obviously, the penile, what's it called? The model. I'm going to call it the model, because I can't think of the correct terminology to use right now. But they basically put it inside the penis, and the pump goes in the balls, which silicone balls. That it's same with guys who had testicular cancer. They get the same type of balls that I'm going to have, and you pump it 5 times to get hard and 5 times to go down, and you can stay hard for 6 hours. So essentially, if I get a girlfriend and she was like, I want sex, she could just squeeze my balls 5 times and get me up, and we can have sex whenever we want, wherever we want. And
wow,
I don't have to worry about getting an erection.
I did not know. So you can have pretty much a fully functioning penis. That is
so the surgery actually originated from one of the world wars, because men in the army were getting their dicks blown off, and that is where phalloplasty originated from, and it became a transgender surgery. It is the same with women in the war that ended up getting their vaginas sort of and like things like FGM came about. That is where designer vaginas, which is what trans women have, came from. And that's what obviously people don't realize, that a lot of these surgeries came from biological men and women, and a lot of these treatments came from you guys, that sort of, it's now been transferred over to trans healthcare. And there's a lot that people don't realize. I didn't know that until I was just curious and wanting to know the history behind phalloplasty and where it all started. And I think it was, I did a social media dive and like a Google dive, and I was started reading into it. And I was like, wow, because I originally didn't want bottom surgery. I was like, no, it looks scary. It doesn't look nice. I then had top surgery, and I was like, yeah, no, I want a penis now. Like, it's going to make me feel complete, in my opinion. But everyone's different. Like, some people don't even want top surgery, and they just leave their top half because it's so small. Others want top surgery, don't want bottom surgery. Like, others want to be on hormones or want a microdose, like it, because some people don't want the growth down there, which is very uncomfortable and very sensitive in your boxes. Like, it's
like thinking about an enlarged clitoris. I know every woman or whoever's listening to this, male, female, I know what we're all thinking. Like, is it sensitive? Do you get easily stimulated?
I get morning glory with it every morning. I get morning glory. This is so TMI, and I really hope the last person that I did do the deed with to stop watch this. So when we were, having a little bit of dream fun, the women and trans men will know this. The trans men will know this if you're on hormones. So even women will know this if you've got, a sensitive clitoris. With my clitoris being very sensitive, once I have, orgasmed, if a girl carries on, I can't come more than once in a row like I used to, because it is so sensitive. It doesn't hurt, but it's like, I need to pee. I'm like, no, get off. And I think I pushed the one, but I was like, no, get off. I can't take it. And I just feel like that's what makes me feel more dysphoric, because of how sensitive it is, because everything down there is heightened. Yes. And I've noticed myself, I don't know if every trans man experiences this. And I don't ever want to ask women that I've dated that I know that have been with trans men before, because my cum is very thick. And I don't know if it's just me or if it's other trans men, but I don't ever want to go and ask one of my trans boys, hey mate, is your cum really watery like a normal, like normally how it used to be? Or is it like thick like sperm? Like, I don't know who to speak to. I've tried Googling it, nothing comes up. And the only thing that came up was, you might have an STI. Just to clarify, I don't. I have regular checks. Wow. But that was scaming. And apparently I could have cancer. But then again, you Google anything and Google tells you. You Google your symptoms, everything's cancer nowadays. Yeah. And that's the thing. So I'm still at a point where I'm waiting to speak to my dental clinic next. And I'm like, well, what is this? And why is my cum thick? Is this normal? Because I don't know. It's been getting worse since I had, obviously, my eggs retrieved. And I'm thinking, is that maybe just my hormone imbalance? Or is that my cum changing because my hormone levels are changing? Or is there something wrong? Like, and my gynecologist can't tell me either, because she's not specialised in it. Because I asked her, she was like, I can try find out the answer and get back to you, but she went, I don't have the definitive answer. She even tried to Google NHS and it didn't come up with anything, but telling me I had an STI. But we did do the STI check to test and I'm clean. But we were just like, well, what is this? And it's sort of like, I don't know if I'm the only trans man out there suffering with it. So if there is any trans man that does watch
let us
this,
know.
Let me know, please, because I don't want to be the only one that I'm some medical anomaly this has just happened to. But I generally think, because my testosterone were level like really high as a female, I was always meant to be a boy, because I had high testosterone. I had little whiskers when I was a female, and I was so embarrassed by it. I was like, oh, but then at the same time I was like, no, I like that. But then I couldn't like that because people around me were like, oh, what you've got? I was really hairy as a female, like really hairy. Like
what's your background?
I'm part Italian. So that is my background.
I'm Greek. I've got to wax the whiskers every couple of weeks, so I can relate.
You know what it's like.
So you're part Italian.
Yeah, the armpit hair. Yeah. I've actually shaved my arms because I've had new tattoos done, but normally my arms are really hairy, and me being a very hairy female, I got quite bullied and judged at school because I was growing leg hair, like thick leg hair, at the age of like 10. I came out with a full hair of back hair. When I came out my mum, and I came out with a full head of hair, lost it all when I was a baby, and then grew it all back. And grew my beautiful lock. Well, semi beautiful locks. Now I've just had a haircut today, but grew my beautiful long hair, cut it all off. Looked a bit like Ruby Rose before I transitioned. Well, before I went on to hormones, medically transitioned, everyone was like, "Oh my god, you look like the male version of Ruby Rose," and now I just look like Demitri, and I look very much like my dad. So
Yes, I love it. I think your whole image and vibe just fits together so well. And yeah, that's what made me so intrigued to meet you and speak to you. I don't think I've even asked half the questions on my list, but this was so much better and more interesting. And I feel it just really naturally flowed. But Dimitri, I have a question from our listeners, and it was, how can we best ally to support our lovely trans friends and family? Is there any tips around that you have?
don't ever tell us that you understand what we're going through, because it will just infuriate us. Just say, listen, we might not understand it. We probably won't ever fully understand it, but we want to be there for you. Check what our pronouns are. Ask what we're comfortable with. Like, just accept us and just treat us as normal, not like some alien with a third eye, or with a human being with an extra toe or a finger. Like, we just don't want to be seen as any different. Like, we already know we're different. We don't need anybody else pointing that out. I guess we just want people, like, in terms of, like I always say, in terms of allies, supporting trans people as they're going through a hard time. Like, I've been through hell the last year on social media as a trans man with online trolling, making sure that other people are okay, like, within the community. Like, even if you're not friends with somebody, like an ally, and I will say this, an ally is not somebody that chooses who they want to support. They support everybody, regardless if you don't like somebody or don't agree with somebody. You can't be an ally unless you support all. You can't pick and choose who you want to support when it fits your narrative. And it's why I'm a firm believer, and I will always say this: people will only support what they want to when it fits their narrative. Just like people will say mental health matters but only cares about their own and the people that they care about, but they'll say mental health matters for all. And
Mm,
it's true. We want people who are allies that will support us, but we know that if we're ever in the wrong and we ever need a bit of a telling off, that you'll be there, but you won't condescend us or speak down to us. You'll be like, actually, you could have said this better. Like, I have people come to me, and I used to think constructive criticism was an attack. And I think a lot of trans people, we go through a toxic trans era when people are trying to just advise us on something.
mm,
Like, God, the amount of stupid haircuts I've had and hair colours. And
yeah.
if some people hadn't told me what the hell you're doing and what are you wearing, because that don't match, maybe 18, 19-year-old of me would have been, oh, fuck off, you're just being nasty, you're transphobic. Me
Mm,
at 18, 19 would have said that. But in reality now, looking back at it when I'm a little bit more grown, I'm a little more established, I'm like, do you know what? Let me take a step back. Actually, you might be right about this, and just opening your eyes. And I think that just doesn't only just go for like allies; it goes for trans people as well, because
mm,
trans people want respect. We also have to give that back out as well. We can't just take. It's got
yeah,
to be 50-50.
yeah,
And not all the time it's going to be 50-50. Sometimes it might be 70-30, and sometimes from both ends. Sometimes an ally might need a bit of help and support because they're getting stick off bigots, or it might be a trans person that's getting stick off bigots that need allies to come and stand together, or it might be trans people getting hate off their own community, for all we know, because that happens a lot.
yeah.
Like, I think it's just mutual respect and mutual understanding, and just never trying to take away from anybody's experience, because me as a trans man, I know I can speak on womanhood because I lived as a woman, but I'll never try and take away what a man is, or what, like I say, what a man is, what a biological man is, and what manhood is, because I've never experienced that. I've experienced manhood in my own right and my own way, and I've transitioned, well, gone through life the same way as sort of a biological male would, but just not genetically. I do not need anybody in my comments telling me you're not biologically male. I know I can't change genetics, and I'm okay with that. Like, I can change how I look and what hormones I've got, and I can also get to pick my willy size, which I'm very grateful to be able to do. And most men have to pay for a penis enlargement for that, but I
Wow.
can get mine on the NHS for free. So who's winning?
Oh my gosh.
And it's
I
what I always say to people: men can hate me, but I don't have to ever worry about contraception because I'll shoot blanks.
Mhm.
Obviously, when you wrap up to stay safe if you sleep with multiple partners, but
Wait, does it
I
actually
also get
shoot?
to
Does it shoot?
I think some people say that they can shoot. Some people have said that they can't. I think it depends on the person.
Okay.
I've seen, I have been curious and have watched some trans porn because I've been curious to see. Only know one person, and he's not
Gosh.
fully finished his lower surgery yet. I've only seen one person I know personally, and there's not much penis trans. I'm not subscribing to somebody's OF to
Yeah.
go and have a look at their PP. I'm gonna try and find it on like sites like Pornhub. But obviously, I'm going to be curious and have a look
And you
because
want to
I
know
want to know how this works.
if you're gonna go through the surgery, like any other surgery, you want to see, you want to know, you want to understand. But it sounds like it is such a, I don't know, not spoken about or not shown, or I'm not sure. What
Well,
it
I'm going to document the whole of mine.
that,
But I've said to people as well, I'm going to be a virgin again, essentially.
yeah.
Like I've gone through two puberties, lived two lives, but I'm going to be a virgin again. So does that mean my body can't reset? Because this is what I've been trying to think. Because technically, I'm now got a piece. Well, I will have a piece. Doesn't that reset, or will it stay the same? And I don't know this question, and there's controversy about it. And I've sort of gone, well, surely it has reset because nobody's touched it before. I've not put it in anyone.
Yes.
So surely it would reset. But then at the same time, you can't take away that obviously before you've had lower surgery, and if you do choose to do so, you've done stuff with other things that look like a penis and work like a penis.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I'm very much like, eh?
Wow.
And this is the conversation we need to be having with allies, because there's so much stuff out there that I've probably spoken with you today, and people are going to be sat here wishing and going, what? Never knew that. Because it's not out there. People need to start speaking about it.
Exactly. And thank you. I've learned so much. But when I was doing my, I did my clinical masters during COVID, and I loved that we did a subject on gender diversity and these sorts of topics. And one of the things they mentioned, which I think may tie into the reason maybe there's not enough research out there, maybe people who've had this surgery don't feel comfortable talking about it or expressing how that went. But there was a statistic that apparently 50% of people who do have surgery regret it. Have you heard that statistic, or do you know if that's common? And apparently when that does happen, they're often shamed or ridiculed by the community because they've been this, I guess, perspective. They've spoken out about it, and then they've decided, oh no, I don't want that anymore. And people don't vibe with that.
It's difficult because I'd like to say there are people that don't regret our surgeries. I damn straight don't regret mine. There are some people that do, but that depends on their, and that doesn't hold a whole community accountable. That's just them as an individual. That's ultimately their story, and I would never want to detransition, so I can't speak on a detransitioner. I'm not. I'll sit here and happily admit I'm not clued up on it. I guess from what I have seen, it tends to be children that were forced into it. That like. From what I've looked at backgrounds and stories of detransitioners, that's how they've painted it out. It might not have been like that, but I don't know because I don't know the ins and outs of it. But I know for me, I definitely don't regret getting my tits cut off because that means I can live my life freely. I don't regret self-medicating. I don't regret being on hormones. And I know there's a whole debate about it, but I wouldn't say it's 50%. I think that's a reach. I think that's just bigoted people trying to make it a lot worse than what it is.
Yeah, and
look at what they're doing with the ADHD community, for example, in the UK. They're trying to throw private NHS right to choose clinicians under the bus because what they want to make the NHS all private and take as much money off the poor and keep feeding the rich. That's the way that the world crumbles. Anything that doesn't fit the government's narrative, they will put anything that they can out there and try and defame people. Trans people are valid and they are real, and gender dysphoria is really fucking hard to go through. Not many people, and there's a statistic, make it to their 30th birthday in the UK.
Wow.
Because of what healthcare
is that because of
suicide
or because of
that's mental health, suicide? It could be loads of things. It could be anything, because gender dysphoria is a silent killer and it's not spoken about enough. It's not easy. People who just think, oh, it's just hating your own gender. Imagine waking up in the same body every single day and constant reminder that you've got female parts or male parts, and you sit there. And I still hate my body right now, and I've had majority of my transition done. I'm not completely happy. Like I look at I want to lose more weight. I still look at my chest. I've still got 2 big scars. That yes, I know they're getting covered. I'm grateful for having it. But at the same time, I never spoke about with me. I was originally meant to get peri. Me finding out that I was having to have double incisions broke my heart because of my history with scars. I had to sit there triggered, and I got trolled on social media for posting my scar results 2 weeks after top surgery by another trans person that was pre-op. And that broke my heart. And I still believe that is the reason why I'm not happy with my chest. Like, I know my chest is perfect. Don't like. I think I know myself that it's perfect, and everybody else tells me. But it goes back to what I'm saying. Regardless if I look very masculine, I'm sounding a little bit more masculine, and my hormones are leveling out, and things are getting a little bit back to normal.
Mm.
That doesn't take away from one shitty comment, and
And
it's
the mental battle. And I think it's so important that people recognize, even as myself, you can be doing all the right things, you can go to the gym, you can eat healthy, you can have the surgery, but doesn't mean you're going to be satisfied, because body image fluctuates, and you can have a day where you're like, yeah, like my chest is looking good, or
oh
like,
god, I look really bloated after. I came out of surgery thinking I was going to look. I think this is a message for trans men out there and trans women, that you're not going to come off that surgery table looking like a Ken doll or a Barbie doll. You're going to have bruising. You're going to have swelling. Your body's not going to look great. Like I say, it's not going to look great. You're going to look amazing because you've got what you want, but you're not going to be looking like these people that have had surgeries 2-3 years ago, because they don't show the good, the bad, and the ugly. Then they go, oh, this is top surgery. You're going to get it within a year. You're going to get hormones. I do not put that false narrative out there. I say to people, listen, I waited 7 years for top surgery, and damn sure that I'm glad I waited, because I was mentally prepared for that. So when they went,
yes,
I'm not gonna lie, I sat there and I sat there with post-op blues, and I was scared, like petrified. I was like, what that? I became very depressed because I'd removed 2 things that had been there for so long, and sometimes I get what I call phantom boob. This
phantom
side,
boob. Yes, what's phantom
yeah,
boob?
it's like I feel it's weird. This side of my chest that is the more
We're
sensitive
both just
side, I'll
touching our
sometimes
chests right
feel,
now.
yeah, that we're both just sat
So
there.
wait,
And do you know what's weird? I
do you
had them
feel
cut
even
off.
though they're gone, you still have breasts?
Do you know what's weird?
What's phantom
I
boob?
got my breast removed. It's like it's when somebody gets their, like an amputee gets their leg cut off, and they say that
Yes.
they can feel their leg even though it's no
Yes.
longer there. That's what some trans men get with their chest, that we sometimes feel that there's a, because my comfort thing, even though I was really dysphoric about my chest, sometimes if I was like really down, I used to like just grab a tit and just sit there. And I think it got to a point where I was at the point where I was like, listen, they're coming off anyway. Like, let me just. And I was one of those people that I didn't bind all the time at home. I only binded when I was going anywhere, and that wasn't much really because I was dysphoric. So I was just like, do you know what? What's the point of me binding at home unless I'm making a TikTok video or going anywhere?
Yeah.
There's no point. And I think I just got to a point where I was like, right, they're coming off soon. Let's leave it at that sort of thing. And that's the way that I've been. But not every trans person thinks like that. And I always say with dysphoria is what you make of it. But at the same time, you are in control of your dysphoria. The minute you let it control you, is the minute that you're fighting a losing battle. It's like
Mm.
looking at your worst fear in the face and thinking, do you know what? Fuck you. You ain't going to beat me. And eventually, it will look at you and it will be like, oh, he or she's like she or they, like
Mm.
not scared of me anymore. So I'm just going to leave them alone, and I'm going to occasionally try and weep my way back in like it does. But eventually, when you turn around and say, fuck you, you ain't beating me, your world's your oyster, and it takes a while to get to that point. It's not going to happen straight away. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes a hell of a lot of
It takes work.
self-preservation and really loving yourself.
Yes,
Yeah,
it takes so much work. And I think one of the main things that has come out of this episode is just how much work you need to do mentally. You can have all
definitely.
the surgeries, you can do this, you can do that, but it's the work of challenging those beliefs. Or when you're having a bad body image day, or when you come out of surgery and you expect you're going to look perfect, and it takes time, and you have scars. And I've seen this from people who've had breast implants or nose jobs or whatever. It's not like that. So, oh my gosh, Demitri, we need to bring you back because you are just a wealth of knowledge. You have taught me so much, and I absolutely love what you're doing, and you're bringing this awareness. But wait, there's one more question. Seahorse, you need to tell us what a seahorse.
Oh my god, right. So I spoke about seahorse dads, which is basically a pregnant trans man. Now I love the term seahorse dad, absolutely love it. So for people that want to Google a bit about seahorses, it's seahorse dads or male seahorses can get pregnant. And they are I believe they're the only animal in the sea that can get pregnant if they're genetically a male. So, or this is where the term seahorse dad comes from, because trans men are men, regardless of what we've got down there, and some trans men decide to carry, and that's where the term seahorse dad came from. And it's a beautiful term, and it's a term not many people know of or hear of, and when they hear it, they're like, that's such a beautiful term. And I have a lot of respect for the guys that do that in my community. I couldn't think about pushing a baby out my hoo-ha, let alone being trans and doing it. Like, that would mess with my story on
Either.
the next level. But do you know what? You do you, boo. Do you know what? I say it. Hats off, because they're going through something that, one, not most trans men can fucking put themselves through. Fuck me, I took my eggs out through. Then that was hard enough. I couldn't imagine birthing my own kid. I'll get a surrogate or a partner for that. Like, no. But I always say, it doesn't matter if they want to carry or not, let them live their life. It's not just trans men that are in gay relationships that do this. Trans men might be with a biological woman like yourself, and you might have fertility problems and might not be able to carry, and that trans man might be fertile, might be able to carry, and that's the reason why they choose. There's so many reasons that they can choose, whether it be they're in a gay relationship, they're in a heterosexual relationship, they're in a bisexual relationship. Maybe they just haven't got a surrogate, or they just want to do it on their own and just experience it. And that's people's own prerogative, and I'm sick of people seeing people talk about it that have one. I sit there and talk about it, I'm not exactly clued up on it, but I know enough about it from seeing friends go through it and hearing about friends that want to go through it. But seeing people on there that are going, oh, well, they're not real men because they're deciding to carry. I will put this analogy out there to people. If they're not real men because they can't carry, does that mean that women who are infertile and can't carry babies aren't real women then? Because that's by your analogy. So and it's for the women that are saying, "Oh, trans men are taken away from women's rights." You do realise on these forms in the UK that say chest feeder, parent 1, parent 2, whatever it says on the forms, they're not on there to take away your rights. They're literally on there to make it more inclusive. It's like when you go to a workplace and you tick what skin colour you are, what language you speak, what sexuality, where what your religious views are. It's the same as that form. It's not taking away your rights. Like, you're getting confused with in America, where you've got the left-wing activists like Jeffrey Marsh that are going, "We demand that you do this," and I'm like, most of us UK lot are like, "You crazy motherfucker! What the hell are you on about? We're just trying to live our lives, and what the hell are you doing?" Like, people like that. That's not a good representation of people like me. I promise you, we are normal. Some of us tidder on the side of normal, but we're all different.
What is
What
normal
is normal?
anyway?
We all come in different shapes and sizes.
Exactly.
And it's why I'll always say, like, before I go, like, that you can't, like, what is a woman and what is a man? You can't define it, because they all come in different shapes and sizes. So why are you trying to define a trans person and what we identify as?
Exactly. And why I feel the need to? I mean, it's not useful, it's not effective. And I think people who also have something to say on social media, just be mindful of what you say. But all the people listening to this, I know, are amazing and are supportive. So, Demitri, I don't want to say goodbye. I feel we could talk forever, but
we
I
need
know
to catch up again.
I know it's
Because
very late.
there's so much I think we want to say, but we ain't got enough time to say it. And that is because we both talk a lot. And then because obviously, like I said to you, this is what people think, that trans people, like the community is just so like this small.
Yes.
It's like the spectrum with ADHD and autism. It's so big and vast, and there's so many different branches, and I'm still learning.
Yes. And until we have you on the show next, make sure, everyone, you go check out Dimitri's page if you want to learn even more about this topic. Demitri, tell the listeners, where can they find you? Plug your socials, anything you want.
So I'm on Instagram and TikTok. They are both the same. They're inked up Demitri. In terms of it, I just talk shit online about my transition, give my opinion, ruffle a few feathers. I'm like Marmite. People either love me or hate me, but at the end of the day, that's just life. I'm not going to please everybody. So, and I've only got one life. I don't really care what Karen from number 42 Zoo Lane tells me, that she hates me and I affect her life so much, and that I'm sinning God. Well, shocks to be you, boo, because I'm Catholic and my faith actually accept me. So you can't preach God to me when I sit there and I go to church, and I'll happily admit that, like, I sit there and I practice my faith still. Like, just because I'm transgender doesn't mean that I don't have a right to do things that everybody else does. And I don't really care what some random person says on the internet. I don't need anybody's validation. At the end of the day, I'm myself. And I think I've gone through life caring about so much what people think about me, that for the first time over the last few days, I've been myself, and I've gone, the mask isn't there anymore, and this is me, and people can either take it or leave it. And if you don't like it, keep your mouth shut. And if you do, then go follow me, please. Thanks.
I love that. Thank you so much, Demitri. It's been a pleasure.
having you on the show. And yes, just thank you so much for everything you share and putting your vulnerability online and speaking with me today. If you love this episode, everyone, take a screenshot, tag us both on Instagram. If you want to hear from us both again in an interview together, let us know what topics you want covered. Leave a rating, leave a subscribe, follow, all the things. Have an amazing day. And thank you so much, Demitri.
Thank you for speaking to me.
Thank you.